Yeah. Yeah. Okay, is everybody here? I'm just still outside. Can you please move forward? Right, there's still some more chairs here. Can you move? Captain, come. Right, very good evening. So, this is our eighth and the last session in the series of our classes. How many of you have been attending the previous sessions? Almost all of them? Okay. And who's attending only today's session, first time? Okay. Right. Before we get on with that, what needs to be done when you are in a new location? This is not a location which we come every day, right? So most of us are here probably the first time. What are we supposed to do? What do we do with respect to safety? Exit, good. Right? Okay, so how many of you check where are the fire exits? Yeah. Window. Easiest one. That's number one, checking the exits. Good. What else do you need to check? With respect to safety, of course. Assembly point, if you run back home, there's no problem. Right? Yeah, but in an office, yes, there's an assembly point, they have to check the attendance, the muster.
Corridors are clear.
Would you mind coming forward here, please? Yes, I'll put the screen that side. Yeah, sorry. What else do you need to check?
Checking the corridors.
Corridors, if it is clear to run,
Yes.
right? Unfortunately, most of the deaths which happen in hotel fires, etc., happens, not because of burns. It happens because of smoke suffocation, right? And one of the things, I come from a highly safety-oriented company background, working with oil companies. So these are some of the things which used to sort of irritate us at that time also, telling this every time. But when we are checking into a hotel, the first thing, we need to check where the exits are and whether we can, because how can we get to that exit without fainting, without getting affected by the smoke. So stay low on the ground, look at the exits, can you feel the exits, etc., etc. It sounds very weird, but people have had their lives saved because they followed these instructions. Second one is, in terms of, do you see that two things hanging there? What are those? There are two colors. Can you see the colors? What are they for? Why there are two different? Which is carbon dioxide? Carbon monoxide? Carbon dioxide. Black is carbon dioxide, okay, and the red one should be powder, or in certain cases, oil fires they use foam, so it will be written on that, correct? So if it's a fire coming from the bulb, which one would you use? Between the two. You see fire, smoke coming from there, what would you use?
CO2.
CO2, why? Everybody is clear that CO2 has to be used, at least now? Right? Why? Captain of course can say. Any guesses? Why CO2 on, why not powder or foam? Suppose it's a foam one, the other one.
It is a conductor.
What does a foam extinguisher have? Foam means there will be water in that, right? Would you pour water on an electric fire? No. Okay? So one of the things I would urge is that, this can happen at home. It has happened in our building once in a kitchen where they left it unattended and we saw fire coming from their kitchen. We had to rush with the fire extinguishers, right? So it's good to know, and are they in working condition, or is it lying in that condition for the last 2 years or 3 years, right? When you open it, there should be something coming from that which is useful to extinguish the fire. So these are some of the basic things which again, it is our own lives, but still we tend to ignore. We take it for granted. Nothing has happened to me for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, so therefore, nothing is going to happen to me for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? That's the general human tendency. Everybody is in the same boat. Okay? So therefore, it's always very, very important, especially if you are in a new location, going to a new place, checking. Even in an existing place, it's worth checking these things out. Right? Too much of safety talk? Or is it required? Next 1.5 hours, we are going to talk only about that, right? So, quick question to you. So, how many of you handle dangerous goods? Some of you must be doing that. That's why you have come here to learn a bit more about it. How many of you handle dangerous goods in your area of work? Only one? All of you? How do you handle it? What is your role?
Actually, I'm handling export shipments.
Okay.
Particularly tank. That's our liquid.
Okay.
Actually, before we are checking the digital cargo, we have to check the MSDS.
Right. So as an export, handling export documentation, whatever you're receiving from your client as the shipper.
Then MSDS and then DGBC.
Right. Are you physically handling the cargo? No, it's only in terms of paper. Then why should you bother? Why should you bother? For the safety of? Who are those others? Huh? Who are these stakeholders in the whole chain? Correct? Who else said they are handling DG? Yes? Same export shipments? Okay, fine. Any other case other than export? Okay. What about others? Everybody is handling export shipments? Everybody? Export or import? Okay. So that's your area of work. What about home? Are there any dangerous goods which you handle at home? Other than those who stay at home? Huh? Cooking gas, okay. Matchbox, okay. Candles. Electricity, okay. What else? Paint, right? Very good. Have you seen warning labels on medicinal bottles which you are supposed to consume, which cure certain things, but there are certain things which are classified under dangerous goods. What about things which you use for cleaning? Cleaning liquids, do you have at home? Just check out how many bottles of dangerous goods you have at home. Clorox, washing liquids, right? I had one of the worst experience of my life with cleaning liquid. We were on a trip, family trip, holidaying in the hotel, and I have the bad habit of getting first in the morning, Early morning I get up, wherever I am. So the first thing I do after brushing my teeth is a glass of water. The different bottles are kept, always filled, so a bottle of water. So that day morning also I woke up, family, wife and 2 boys are sleeping. I got up, brushed my teeth, there was a bottle there, I popped it, and it was cleaning liquid. True story. True story. Right? So what had happened is the whole day was spoiled, we couldn't go out, we had to cancel our trips, etc., etc. But how it happened is that it was a service apartment, so we were doing a little bit of cooking also. So my wife thought that it is good to get some cleaning liquid from the housekeeping there. So they said, okay, how do I give it to you? They put it in a bottle which was used for water, and she kept it there. She told the boys, telling that, don't touch this. This is not water. Right? So something told her that I wouldn't probably drink it from the kitchen there, I would probably drink it from the dining table which was there. So a very big lesson which comes in our labeling, placarding, etc. in terms of telling that do not use a container which is used for one particular product for another one, especially which has been used for edibles. Right? Sounds silly, simple, but these are the things which can cost lives also. Okay? Good. So that's why I'm telling that all of us are involved, not just in terms of handling paperwork in the office, whether we are doing import or export or shipments, etc. On a daily basis we are seeing this, but we don't realize the extent of hazard which is there in these products. Okay? I got some simple questions here just to wake you up after a hard day's work and your coffee, snacks, etc. But still, just to tickle your brain. Everybody can read this? True or false? Sorry? False? Then why do you wear? Do you wear seatbelts whichever country you go to? No. Some of you, yes. Good. We'll come back to that. Okay, just think about it. True or false? IMDG code is law, therefore it's mandatory to be used. False? How many of you say false? You said no. No means false. Is it mandatory? As per law? Which law? As per which law it is mandatory? Huh? If you said true, then you should be able to name as per which law? Your own company law, personal law? Huh? ICS law? It's applicable for all CE shipments including break bulk cargoes. Should include break bulk as well as bulk cargo. So you've got containerized cargo, you've got break bulk cargo, then you've got bulk cargoes. Is it applicable? IMDG is applicable for all the categories of sea shipments? Yes? True? How many of you are handling bulk shipments here? Nobody? Okay. Safety. This is the responsibility of only operations staff. Salespeople need not worry about it. CEO need not worry about it. False? Unanimous there? Everybody's responsibility? Okay. So tomorrow when you step into the office, first thing you will check the fire extinguishers, okay? Fire warden, very good, we'll come to that. Multimodal transport. All of you understand multimodal transport? What is it? Any two modes of transport, which is more than one mode of transport. So, what happens in that? Suppose there is a container which is coming from China, then it is put on a truck and going in UAE road, and UAE law says that no, this is something else. This is the way it has to be treated. So which will be use while handling that container? Which law? Will UAE law be used, or then you can come up and say, no, as per IMDG, I packed it properly, I stored it properly, therefore I am correct.
Yeah, we are transporting this civil
Right. So how do you, if there is a question which comes from them telling that, sorry, you cannot transport this by road from Jebel Ali to Ras Al Khaimah, what would you do? Yeah, but you cannot open the container and repack it. What would you do? Mm-hmm. Right. So is there a difference between local law and IMDG? That's what I'm asking. In terms of how it has to be handled. There is? Okay, we'll not debate it now. We'll come back to that. When I drive a car, how many of you drive here? All of you? What about the person sitting next to you? Do you insist? Please wear your seatbelt. So what about those sitting at the passenger seat, rear passenger? Do you insist? Do you insist? You don't insist. If you are sitting there, do you wear the seatbelt? As per UAE law, it is actually mandatory, but then it's not been implemented in the strict sense. Right? In my car, the rule is very clear. The car doesn't move unless everybody buckles up. I said not for your safety, because I am worried about my safety and the hefty fines which I will have to pay. Because there have been cases in the UAE where a father, the one which I remember vividly is that where a father had to go to jail because his son died sitting in the back seat, was not wearing a seatbelt. And the responsibility is with the driver to ensure that others are buckled up. The law is there, right? But we again say, I have not been affected, I will not be affected. Complacency, right? Have you heard these terms, risk and hazard? Are they the same? What is the difference? What is the difference between risk? Doctor, please come here.
Risk can have positive as well as negative connotations. Hazard is always negative. Risk can give me an option to strike something somewhere. It's a risk, but I can always gain. But hazard, no.
Okay. What else?
Hazard is classification of defining the risk is impacts of.
What do you give me an example of a risk? Is sitting today here and listening to this talk, is it a risk?
Risk is if I park.
What is the risk in today's class?
It's like if I'm a park my car outside.
Right.
Take a risk. Maybe the traffic light will come.
Very good, very good. So either you are saving on the parking fee, that's what Dr. Roy was mentioning, that could be a positive in terms of taking a risk there. That it is something, which is there is potential to happen, but need not happen. But in terms of hazard, that there is a real potential threat which is there with respect to the hazard. There is no positive hazard. Okay, good. IMDG code, is it revised every year? How often is it revised? If you have seen the books and used the code. Every 2 years? Good. That's a close this thing. Yeah, but there's a validity of spanning 3 years there, but it's 2 years. Good. How many classes are there of product? DG class? 9. So 1 to 9, does it indicate the extent of hazard which is there in those products? So is number 9 more hazardous? Right. Okay. So just to MSDS, what is MSDS? What is the full form of MSDS? Material Safety Data Sheet. So if it is available, do you still need to refer to IMDG? Who is responsible to give the MSDS? Shipper. Is it always a shipper? Is it the owner? Manufacturer, good. Very good. You're not going to debate the answers now. I'll ask the same question at the end. We'll see, whether I have passed or not. Okay. Right. Does anybody remember this? I put the date there. These photos. This probably some of you may remember. Huh? Anybody remember? If you have been handling containerized cargo, dangerous good export, this should have caught your eye. What are these? Red and blue. Lego blocks? Huh? Those are containers. This was in Tianjin, in the import warehouse, the port warehouse which was there. Right? Huge explosion, buildings, so many cars were affected, it was a huge crater, etc. See the extent of containers which are lying and mangled, etc. Right? What do you think was the potential cost? The reason for this? What could have been the reason? It was an explosion, fine. Negligence of whom? What is the reason for this particular explosion? What could have been the reasons? Probable. One is that it could have been dangerous goods which were stored there, right? It could have been stored in a place which it was not supposed to be there. Segregation would not have been proper. There could have been n number of reasons which has contributed to the whole thing. That's why we say I've been walking this road, driving this road the last 20 years, nothing has happened. But it's because some of these factors have not come together. But when some of these errors come together, that is when an incident like this happens. It could have been anybody in the chain. It could have been the person who did the export declaration. It could have been the shipper who gave a wrong declaration. Or they didn't know what exactly it was. It was somebody who did not match the information between the MSDS and the other information which was available. Somebody who did not read it properly, therefore it was not stored properly inside the container or on deck or on the deck, under deck, etc. Or ultimately when it was stored there, it should not have been stored in an open yard. Right? So a number of factors can go in terms of such an incident happening, and everybody who's in that chain is a responsible party. Everybody in the chain. It's not just the person who's physically handling the cargo, physically handling the container, but everybody in the chain, right from shipper to receiver, documentation, etc. Okay? We don't want to see anything like that in our backyard, right? We don't want to see that.
So what was the result of investigation? What was the real cause?
I have not gone into, because some of these incidents, Captain, do you remember anything?
I remember Tianjin, but I can't remember where it goes.
Yeah, because some of these things,
Final reports are in now.
it goes for a long time. There's a lot of legal
You
implications.
are assuming that this would have.
Absolutely. When it comes to, I'll show you some more incidences related to vessels. So, they talk about the most probable cause which is there. Yeah. Right. So again, coming back to daily practices. Yeah. Wearing seat belts. What about this? Is it a safe practice?
If it's part of
Hmm?
it's moving,
What about this?
that's very
Familiar scene? Yeah. It happened recently in India. One of a very famous musician, he himself lost his life after some days, where his daughter was sitting on his lap or mother's lap. 2-year-old daughter was the first one to lose her life. So, unfortunately, but people still do that. Yeah. So this is the law states that yes, this is the correct way to do that in a safe manner. Familiar picture, right? With respect to how many people are involved in terms of, say, 5,000 TEU ship. How many people are involved in the whole shipment? Assume that it's all laden containers which are there, all with cargo. How many people in the chain? 5,000 containers can have how many shippers, how many consignees? Even if we take that it is all FCLs, right? Still there could be 5,000 people involved. How many people who have handled the documents of each and every container? How many people have physically handled? It could have come in multiple ports. How many people have handled that? How many truckers who have handled this, right? So that is what makes this particular business in terms of the risk being very high, because the multitude of people who are involved in the chain. Okay, so that's what it makes it much more challenging. Some pictures there are some videos on YouTube. You can look that up later. But which was the latest one to happen on a container ship? What you have heard of? In this region, and the ship is here now in Rydok, right?
That's cool.
Have you heard of the Maersk Conam? Which was in March, right? Why is it that we always see only container ships like this? You don't see an oil tanker like this very frequently, which is as frequent as a container ship, which is laden with much more volume of dangerous goods, which are, even if it is chemicals, we don't see these kind of accidents happening so frequently. Why is it? Why is it more with container ships? I've got a list of that here. Yeah, these are some of the big ones. Yeah, these are some of the big ones. Yeah, this was 6th of March. Right. So it comes back to again in terms of the number of people who are involved. In a big oil tanker with so much of cargo there, you could hardly have 5 or 6 people who are involved in that whole chain. Oh, sorry. Okay. So that's the reason where you got much more of incidences which are happening on the container ships. Let's come back in terms of just some basics in terms of danger, hazard, and risk. We keep use this very interchangeably. So, what is that? The bear which is chasing the man. Is it a danger, a hazard, or a risk? Danger. So what do you do when you're in danger? Just run, right? So if there is a fire alarm here, if it happens, what would you do? Run. That's why you should know where is the exit. where to run is important, right? Anybody who will just go and ask the office manager, please show me your fire safety manual, let me find out where is the exit. Because the danger is something which is immediate, which is there. Okay. The same bear, it is being now used in a circus for entertainment. So is it a danger, a hazard, or a risk? Why is it a risk? Okay. Who are the people involved there? The ringmaster is there, and we are there as spectators inside the cage or outside the cage. So for spectators, for we spectators, is it a hazard or a risk? For spectators, is it a hazard or a risk? How is it a risk?
Because we are outside the cage.
Yeah. So is it a risk or a hazard? What is the difference there between risk and hazard? So for whom it is a hazard? For the people inside, is it a hazard?
Inside is the risk and outside is the hazard.
So now explain what is hazard. You are right, but now explain in that context what is the meaning of hazard. Then we'll know what is hazardous goods very clearly. Right? So a hazard is something which has got a potential to cause harm, but if it is handled properly, the way it is prescribed to be handled, you follow the instructions properly, it'll help you in achieving your goals. You talked about cooking gas, you talked about matchbox, you talked about fire. Yeah, fire is required. If handled properly, it is your friend. Right? So those who are inside, yes, they are at a risk because, yes, they are trained, they are handling that particular dangerous animal, the way it has to be handled, but still there is a residual risk which they are taking much more than the people who are outside. So that's why there's a second line of difference, which is the cage, which is there. There's a second line of difference, which is there for us. For them, there is a risk, but they are trained even to how to counteract that risk. Clear? Okay. So these are the definitions, which is the danger. It is immediate, physical or chemical effects which can be there, or a situation where an individual is put to at immediate risk. Hazard is, it could be just health effects, right? So even one of the products at home is your acetone. Do you know that acetone is there at home? There's a lot of them. Your cleaning liquids, your nail polish remover, right? So all comes into that category, right? Which can, if it is handled properly in the right volumes, the way it has to be handled, then it will help you. Otherwise, it can have a potential to cause harm. Okay? It can be to an individual, property, or the environment. It can be any of these categories. And the risk is just the probability. That's why whenever we talk about risk, we categorize that. Oh, is it high risk? Is it medium risk? Is it low risk? Right? So it is there in terms of a probability of getting harm or experiencing some danger. And in risk also, it comes in terms of what are the mitigation measures which are there. Yes, I know that there is a potential threat which is there, but how can I counter those risks? Right? So in your own words, you can define based on what you're handling. You can think about how do you define this hazardous goods. Also, you would hear different terms which are being used in terms of hazardous materials, hazmat, dangerous goods, etc. But everything means the same. Okay? So a definition which is there is that what is given in the textbook is capable of posing risk to health, safety of people or property or the environment. Or you can also say that yes, in terms of what is given in the IMDG. Okay, so whatever is listed in the book is a dangerous good, right? Or the DGR. What is the DGR? Where is it used? IMDG is applicable for C. What about air shipments? Do they have a dangerous goods code? Is it equal to IMDG or stringent or lenient? More stringent, right? Particular reasons for that. Classified according to IMDG or DGR. Are those classifications the same which are used in air cargo as well as sea cargo? The 1 to 9 classes? Are they the same?
Yes.
When they are transported by road, are they the same? How does each and every country know that what is to be used? How do they follow it as a uniform practice? How is it possible? How do you ensure that if that question comes to you, as per my code, this cargo is supposed to be class 3, but you are talking as per IMDG, it is class 2. Is it possible? Yes or no?
No.
Why not? So therefore, that's why it is all coming under it comes from UN into IMO and then the dangerous goods regulation. Whatever conventions are there, internationally each country they ratify that and they become signatories to that, which means that they accept and implement the same kind of code. That is why a civil defense in any country would be trained in these things. Okay? So let's look at some of these aspects. Now, just to say that today's session we are not going into too much of detail, but in case you have any specific questions as to about a particular product, etc., we can tackle that later. Today's session is just intended to give an introduction, and those who are handling, yes, in terms of what more you should know, and rather than what more, I would say why you should do what you're doing now. Right? That's what I'm trying to establish. So, what is the IMDG code as per your understanding? How would you define what is the IMDG code? Yes? You have come for an IMDG session, so you should know. What is the IMDG code in one sentence? How would you define?
Dangerous classification.
For what? Good classification. Dangerous goods to be used where? Which transport? Maritime. Good. Right? It's specific to maritime transport for dangerous goods. So where is it used? Anywhere in the chain where it is used, and there is one more classification or specific word which we have to add in terms of packaged goods. Right? That's why I asked that question in terms of, is the same code applicable for bulk? No, bulk also is the same classification of dangerous goods, but in terms of applicability, IMDG code is with respect to packaged goods. Okay, that's where you'll find much more details regarding packaging. Why is it done? Why should we learn this? Why should we use this? Why one more thing to be learned? Yes, for the safety of whom? Everybody in the chain. Whosoever is coming in contact with the goods, so therefore everybody in the chain has to know what is happening. When is it used? Is it only during transportation? Right from the beginning, in terms of packaging, your labeling, your storing, stowing, unloading, throughout the chain. Till such time it is consumed, right? The same code is used. Who is supposed to implement this? Who is ensuring the implementation of this? Who ultimately stops saying that, sorry, you cannot do this? Carriers are doing this, right? But ultimately, there is everybody who is involved in the chain, there is a responsibility. Even before it goes to the carrier, there is a responsibility. You are acting as even if you're a forwarder, acting as a carrier, before it goes to the main line or to the NBO itself, the declaration goes, there is a responsibility for everybody. Otherwise, the simplest thing is, yes, this is what my shipper gave, I don't understand, you please tell me yes or no. Tomorrow, suppose the carrier the main line makes an error there, the person sitting there makes an error and says, sorry, you cannot carry this. What would you do? Unless you know a little bit to counter that, yes, they are there ultimately responsible for this, right? But if a little bit knowledge is there, you could even counter that thing that explain to me why it cannot be. Have you ever faced a situation where a particular carrier said yes for a cargo in one voyage, but in the subsequent voyage they said no? Have you ever experienced this? Yes? What was the reason they gave? Did you ask the reason? Right, I am asking where a line accepted the cargo in one voyage. Okay, so why? How did that happen? What changed between this voyage and the subsequent voyage? Suppose the reverse happened, you would have questioned, right? You accepted it 2 weeks back, why is it that you are not accepting now? Is it possible? What could be the reasons?
Incomplete information.
They encountered
Some other car, very good. If there are already cargoes which are committed and there is a segregation issue which is there, that's one reason. Another reason is that there are certain cargoes which are restricted even in transit ports. Right? So in a particular way, the vessel may be calling a port which does not allow this even in transit. Right? So the whole idea is that at least some basic information you should know. It's not about questioning their authority or their knowledge, etc. But unless you have some basic knowledge things that these are the possibilities which are there, otherwise what would you explain to your customer? The customer says you did not accept but they accepted it. They would have probably put it in some other vessel. You lose the business or you lose the customer completely. Right? So therefore some of these basic things you should know. So everybody in the chain is using it. It is for the sake of everybody in the chain. And then the big question comes, how? How do we use this? How is it implemented? You just now mentioned that yes, the lines, they look at that, right? So there comes again one more aspect of training, right? When you go to DGR, as per the IATA standards, that unless you are certified and that certificate is valid only for a specific period, I think it is 2 years? 2 years. Every 2 years, those who are authorized to handle these cargoes and sign on the document have to be certified by a competent authority, approved authority every 2 years. But that's not the case with IMDG. Is there anybody insisting in IMDG like that? That you have to be? Why? Certain countries have implemented it, but not on a universal scale, because again it's the sheer magnitude of the industry which is there. So that is why at least the main lines have taken that accountability on them in terms of telling that yes, the ultimate responsibility stops with them. Okay? Okay so far? Any questions? So it's very clear why we have to do this. It's not for somebody else, it's for our own sake. The same container you cleared, maybe they are next to your car when you are traveling here. So for our own sake do that. Okay? So it's the Maritime Dangerous Goods Code for the dangerous goods by sea. Key objectives: ensure safe transportation, protect the marine environment. You say, oh, such a small volume, 5,000, 10,000 tons, 20,000 tons in such a big ocean, does it matter? Does it matter? It's not a small bucket of water which is kept there. Does it really matter?
Yes.
Yeah, it matters. Yesterday there was a report I was reading about the effect of sunscreen lotions on marine life, and it was a real eye opener in terms of telling that how sunscreen lotions are affecting the coral reefs in some of the beaches around the world. Right? So we think that yeah, it's a small volume which is there, but all of those things add up. Right? So that's the effect which is there. Yeah. Facilitate unrestricted movement. Why? Because the roads are there for me to drive. It is my car. I have paid for it. I have got a license. I'll drive wherever I want, the way I want to. Cannot, right? So the laws are there, the rules which are given there. Yes, it is to protect me and also to protect everybody, all the users around me. So the same thing applies here also. Dangerous goods are there. Yes, you transport it the way it has to be transported. Airports, I always see a couple of these people who argue with the airline staff. They'll have a big bottle carrying 5 liters of something. They said, why can't they take this? It is harmless. But there are certain rules which have been there and they are strict about it, telling that it is for protection of everybody. Okay? So who is doing this? Under the framework, that's international framework, under the IMO, that's under the United Nations specialized, it's a specialized agency. So the two key issues which are there, safety of life at sea and prevention of pollution from ships. Some of the big discussions which are happening today in the marine industry is with respect to pollution which comes from the fuel, the burning of the fuel on the ship, right? So there is a sulfur cap, there's a regime, a regulation which is coming into effect in 2020 and 2020, right? And there's another one known as ballast water exchange, if you have heard that term. Have you heard that term, ballast water?
Yes.
That's the water which the empty ship takes in. So even that has caused harm to marine life, because you can imagine hundreds of ships, thousands of ships taking water from all around the world, coming to the Gulf and putting that water here. Right? You may again say that what harm can such small water cause in the ocean, but that has seemed to affect the ocean, the marine life. Right? So a lot of such things are there. So these are the two main issues which are there: safety of life and the pollution from the ship, which are addressed by these two conventions. United Nations or IMO under United Nations, they don't pass laws. They're not legal bodies. So that's why it's known as convention. Yes, they are there in terms of advisory, regulatory, where the individual countries have to sign up for that. Then that becomes a part of their legal framework. Right? So that's the international framework. So these are some of the other ones under IMO, with respect to safety of life at sea, marine pollution. So this is where the IMDG comes in. There is something for solid bulk cargoes, right? And then there is for the liquefied gases, there is a code. So there are many of them which are specific to each and every trade. There are specific codes which are given, right? So you would even see for safe carriage of grain in bulk. Is grain hazardous? But when it is in bulk, there are certain effects which are there which makes it hazardous. right? So there are certain things which are non-mandatory. So depending upon the area of usage, users can use it, incorporate it in their own practices. This is just a list of that here. Now, in terms of the how is it linked to IMDG, as I said, the SOLAS and MARPOL, it comes from that primarily. And then there are detailed specification which comes from those two, and therefore, whosoever has adopted that, so that's why I was talking about countries which are signatories to the SOLAS convention, it becomes mandatory. Once they are a signatory to that, IMDG becomes mandatory to be implemented by them also. They cannot say, yeah, I signed up for this, but I don't want this. Sorry, it is part and parcel of the same convention. Right, now there are certain other things. I asked you about road transportation, etc. So which is the authority in UAE which governs the road transport? UAE. It is the FTA, right? So therefore, similarly in other countries, so you've got, so this is within Canada, this is the US Department of Transport regulations, within Europe, right? For air transport is the ICAO, Civil Aviation Organization, IATA dangerous goods for the, again for aviation, and for IMDG it is for the international sea transport. So each of these countries, so that's why in certain countries the implementation has been very, very strict, where the local regulations are completely adopted, or even it is much more than what is detailed out in IMDG. Some of these countries are very advanced, or some of these countries have their own certification programs to say that. I think Australia is one example where they have a certification program for those handling sea cargo also. So that is up to the respective countries how they want to enhance. What we were talking is about the minimum standards. Now, what are some of the basic principles of the IMDG code? So we talk about classification, right? So you've got the 9 classes, and there are subdivisions there for some of them. And we talk about packaging, as I mentioned, the whole chain starts with packaging, right? After packaging, how do you know what is inside? How do you know this is water, right? So there is a label which is there. So here we trust. If it is put on the table like this, it should be water. It must be water, right? But it's good to check. That's why the labeling is important. Okay. Then the documentation. So that's where some of you are involved, or most of us are involved in terms of, because we don't see the actual goods. Those who are buying those cargoes, those who are shipping those cargoes, even those who are on board the ship, do not see the actual cargo. They are depending upon what? They are trusting what? They are just trusting the documentation. We can also say, oh, I trusted my shipper. They are supposed to give the right information. Yes, but there is an amount of, there is a due diligence which is there on everybody's part, right? Now that's what they say. If there is a leaking container, the port is not bothered what is leaking. The moment they say, even if it is water, it may be water, but the moment they say they find that it is leaking, it is out and it is segregated. Then it is the responsibility is on the owners of the cargo, the carriers involved, etc., to go and prove that what is inside and how it has to be handled. Okay, so documentation is extremely important. Segregation could be either in storage or on board, right? So how it has to be segregated. Okay, so even in a group of people, right? There can be segregation, right? In terms of telling that, ensure that these two people don't sit together. Right? How did that come about? Because there is a pattern. When they are left alone, there is no problem. They are with somebody else, there is no problem. But the moment they are together, there is a potential, So same thing applies for goods also. Okay? So segregation rules. Is it there in our office manual somewhere? I see a lot of smiles. Okay? And then storage, in terms of how it has to be stored on the vessel. Anybody had any experience with vessel storage? In the current scenario, how do you think it is done? That's not my job. I just give the container, they store it. A ship which is carrying, what's the biggest capacity container ship now on the waters? How much is it? How many containers? How many TEUs? How many? 20? 22,000? Which ship? No, that was a long time back. Hmm? No. Without Google, what's the answer? You remember it's the OOCL Hong Kong. Yeah, it's the OOCL Hong Kong. After the 22,000 plus something. Yeah. If it has changed, please let me know. You never know. Something would have been launched just now. Right? So stowaway. So how do you think they are stowing? You know, there are containers in and out. The vessel comes in and out generally in how many? 48 hours sometimes. So many TEUs in, out, etc. And it has to be stored properly. How do you think it happens? Okay, today you can say everything is computerized. That's why the moment your pre-shipment alert goes in, your declaration goes in, when they are giving the release, at that time itself it is plugged in terms of telling that yes, so there are so many, it's all a completely computerized program which immediately flags out telling that yes, I can accept this cargo, sorry, I cannot accept this cargo for this destination, etc., etc. Right? But it is based on a lot of these factors which goes in, based on what is the segregation permitted, what are the ports which it is calling, what are the restrictions in those ports, all those things goes, permutation and combination, it goes in terms of the vessel storage, on deck, under deck, away from heat sources, all those things are taken care of. But imagine the days when it was done manually, right? It would have been a nightmare, right? In terms of, okay? So that's the way it is done, right? Emergency response, Francis, any experience in terms of, you want to share? Stowage when you were doing manually? But more in terms of Excel sheets and, right? And then comes that, okay, if at all, yes, I have done all what is supposed to be done, but in case something goes wrong, what am I supposed to do? Right? So tomorrow, if you are on the road and if you say that there is a truck which is overturned and there is liquid which is spilling, what would you do? Turn the car and run away? Park the car and run away? Right? What do you see on those trucks? So there is a placard which is kept there, right? There is a placard which is there, which is the same coding which is used, right? That's why even if it is water, wastewater, they have to put a placard and say that it is wastewater. Even some certain wastewaters can also fall under the hazardous category which is there, right? Why it is put? Because who is the first person to come rushing there when an accident happens? Is it the manufacturer? Is it the carrier? It's the police and the civil defense. So they are also trained in this, in the same code. They are also trained in terms of what this label indicates. That is why it is used in terms of numbers and pictures and colors, so that depending, irrespective of the language, whichever country it is passing through, the code is the same. So they know that the first responders, as they are called, they should know what they should do, and more importantly, what they should not do. So that is the training which is. So that is the importance of having these placards which are there. So never have a shortcut in terms of the number of labels of the placards which has to be put, the quality of the placards. Otherwise, in voyages, by the time it is 10 days into the voyage, it becomes illegible, right? A mutilated and illegible label is more dangerous than having no label at all, right? So I always say, my driving instructor with whom I went for driving test here, the first thing he said, a guy without coming with indicator is better than one coming with the wrong indicator. Do you agree or not? Yeah? Because you would be putting the right but turning left or going straight. So similarly here also, no placard, you can even say, oh, there's no placard like this, but something which is a wrong label, a wrong placard, or a wrong quality where the number changes or it is mutilated, it's more dangerous because you don't know what's there inside. So emergency response is in terms of, yes, everybody in the chain, they subscribe to the same code, they are trained in the same code, therefore they know exactly what to do and what not to do with the cargo. Okay? So it is updated every 2 years, and why it should be updated? Why again put us into trouble? Why can't they just lock it in, leave it there? Till such time I am in this business. Why? Why should it keep changing? What revisions can happen? Why? New categories, new products can come. Good. Okay. There are so many innovations keep happening, especially in chemicals. Yes, keeps happening. What else? What else can change?
Properties, not that. They get the goods.
Hmm?
The experience can prove that what they have.
Experience, right? Because whatever is being given to us as guidelines is based on what has been experienced, what has been experimented with, etc. A new information can come up based on, say, changes in weather patterns or whatever. You know, what else keeps changing? What else keeps evolving? What are the industry which we are involved? Hmm? What else keeps changing or will keep changing? Packaging, right? Transportation, the whole transportation itself keeps changing. When did containerization come into being? It's not so much far into history that containerization came, and the way the containerization itself is evolving is it keeps changing, right? So with all these changes happening, so that is where you have revisions which are coming in, and it is done once in 2 years. Yes, Sudesh?
For example, mentioning about the lithium battery.
Right.
Maybe 5-6 years back, nobody heard about it. And then all of a sudden, lithium battery.
Right. So even with respect to mobile, sometimes you may be encountered with restrictions while checking in, right? So the battery pack is something which came in as a new restriction. Say that it cannot go into a checked-in baggage. You can carry it in your handbag, but not in your checked-in bag. So it's again based on the way the industry is changing and the way the experience is there. So new dangerous goods which can be done, new technology and methods in terms of handling those goods. So that keeps changing. Safety concerns based on experience, right? And therefore it comes with an amendment cycle. But the good news is that the basic structure remains the same. How many of you have handled or looked at the book? The IMDG book? Nobody? You only pass it on to the line. Let them do that work. Nobody has an experience in at least seeing the book? I'll get some copies for you. Give you a good night's sleep. Right? So some of the old versions are available in the net for free download. Old versions. Okay? So I can send you the link. So have a look at it. But now of course they have moved into web versions, etc. where you just put the number or just the product name, it will automatically gives you all the details. Otherwise, looking at the book, again, it's a tough thing, but that's the best way to learn in terms of identifying the so we are currently in this cycle where it was the version number, the 16th cycle which is there. That is what is being used now, which is applicable for whole of 2018. So the green indicates that for that year it is 100% this has to be followed. This particular version 3816 amendment has to be followed. Why? It is, there's a yellow because yes, it was published in 2017. So it gives you 1 year time to slowly get into that. It is not mandatory, but most of the companies then start implementing it immediately. And why 2019? Because the next amendment is already published, because we are already in mid of November, it's already published, which can be, you can start using from 1st of January 2019. So nobody can refuse a cargo based on that, right? But by 2020 it will become the mandatory one, the next one, 3980. Okay, so that's the way the amendments happen. So it is effectively 2 years, but there is an overlapping year which is on either side. Valid up to 3 years. The validity is 3 years, but effectively you can say that from here, into the next one. Alternating years for implementation, and therefore, they call it as the green year and the yellow year. So 2018 is a green year or a yellow year? So which means that 100% it has to be implemented. So how do you use this? So even though you have not seen it, so it's good to know some of the basics which are there. So you got 2 books. So it is still in the book format. Then there are supplements which are there. It's not that one can be used by one office and then by another office. No, it's not a copy. It's a continuation which is there. Contains a supplement sometimes. So these are the general contents which are there. What is the definition? It includes even training requirements which are there, classification, packing and the tank approach which are there, including IBCs, consignment procedures, right? So construction and testing of packaging. What is testing of packaging? How do you define that yes, this packaging is sufficient? When you are packing something, say perfume bottles you are taking back home, how do you pack them? Even if it is original packing is there, how would you pack them? You wrap it, so you have some idea how your cargo is going to be handled at the airport, right? Therefore, probably you would have seen videos or physically seen how it is being handled or manhandled, so therefore you put additional precaution, right? In terms of, yes, sometimes peeping out from the aircraft window you would have seen at what height it is falling, with what speed it is being thrown around. So the next time, you would ensure that there is an additional layer of packaging which is there. So same thing applies here where there are physical tests which are done in terms of telling that, in terms of drop tests, pressure tests, etc., and based on that, the packaging is specified. So that there are additional layers of protection which is given, right? So all those things are given in terms of, then there could be limitations of packaging which are there in terms of how much volume can go in a single container, how many those containers can go in a multiple pack. All those things are very clearly defined, right? Provisions containing transport operations, so that's also included there. In volume 2 adds a complete list which is there, the dangerous goods list. Okay? Special provisions, limited quantities, accepted quantities, all those things are special. So when somebody is accepting or rejecting your cargo, it is based on what is there in the book. Unless, as I mentioned that, yes, if they have not read it properly, or there are other considerations, so that is where always asking that question helps in terms of, yes, can you please tell us why this cargo is rejected, right? And then there are other appendix which are given in terms of proper shipping names. So these are some of the things which you get, right? So many times it may be rejected or they may come back. Have you ever had this experience telling that, sorry, please tell us what is the PSN, the proper shipping name? Because commercial invoice may say that it is one particular product. It may say it is nail polish remover, but when it comes to shipping, it has to be the actual the chemical which is being used. Because you will not find nail polish remover in the book here, right? But you will find acetone. Okay, so that is where some of the pushback can come in terms of, because for the commercial purpose, the shipper may say, or whoever is your client will say that, sorry, I have to put this, otherwise the LC may be rejected, right? There may be letter of credit conditions which say that this is the name which has to be put, but that is fine. But when it goes into the declaration, it has to be based on the actual proper shipping name which is there. There are additional things which comes in the book. Right, so how do you use that? So if at all, you get a chance to do that, it talks about all these additional things on emergency procedure, the medical first aid guides, reporting procedures, even that is specified. So for example, an incident happens, so certain countries have implemented it much more stringent, certain companies have implemented it in much more stringent fashion as to if at all an incident happens, how it has to be reported, to whom all it has to be reported. Sometimes it has to be reported to government authorities also. Okay, and then of course with respect to packaging. Now quickly, any questions so far? So we can quickly go through the classification. Any questions so far? No? Completely confused? Okay. These are two or three aspects. I have just taken it out and put it here because this is something which probably, anybody heard of this flashpoint? What is that? Or what is the question which you have heard with respect to flashpoint? Sorry? Right. So what is the flashpoint? it indicates to some extent, okay, the extent of hazard which is there, okay. Temperature at which the cargo can catch fire. Indirectly, yes, it specifies that, right? So this is one aspect which normally you have come across, right? So it is actually at the temperature at which it gives enough vapors with which it can, when mixed with sufficient amount of oxygen, because for a fire to be there, you need all the three. Right? That's the basic, you call the fire triangle. You need the fuel, you need the oxygen, and you need the ignition which is there, right, in the right amount. Anything which is more in excess or lower than what is required, it will not catch fire. Okay, so there's a specific apparatus with which it is tested. So some examples. Now I say, oh, petrol is more dangerous, so it has got a lower flash point. What actually it means is that yes, even at an ambient temperature, it can produce enough vapors when mixed with sufficient quantity of air, and there's an ignition source, it can catch fire. Okay. Toxicity. This is another term which is very commonly used. Of course, all these things are contained in the MSDS, but then it is used for classification as well as for segregations. Yeah. So the extent of poison which is there, it is toxic. Okay. What are the lethal doses which are there? Okay. So again, those who are working in this kind of environment. So when you're filling petrol in your car, you keep the windows down, or with your AC on, the windows are up. Actually, we should shut off. Huh? You're very honest. Right? So, do you like the smell of petrol? Is it actually the smell of petrol? Is it actually the smell of petrol which you're getting? Yeah, and you're standing there just for 5 minutes. Yeah, less than that, it's okay. But you try standing there the whole day on a July afternoon, right? You will know. So those who are handling this physically, there are actually specified limits. Yes, there is an extent of hazard which is there in these products. So there's an exposure limit which is given in terms of telling that yes, you should not be exposed to this particular dosage for more than 2 hours in a day continuously. After that, they have to be given a rest. Especially those who are working in terminals which handle this chemical, or even working on ships, there are specific limits. All this comes back in terms of the toxicity and the lethal dosage which is there. Right? So that's the kind of, or it can be exposure. It can even go through the skin. It is not just through the lungs, etc., or getting to the eyes. So there's an example which is there, right? So in terms of acute toxicity, dermal is through the skin, inhalation, exposure time, how much is the maximum, and what are the kind of indications, right? So even doctors are trained in this. Why should doctors be trained in this? Why should doctors be trained in this? Same code. Yeah, in terms of what is the material which has gone inside you, what is the extent of harm which it can cause, and therefore what are the countermeasures which has to do. They cannot induce vomiting on each and every case of ingestion which is there, right? So these are the kind of information which goes along with the MSDS. So that's why they say that the moment if something happens, especially it can happen with children, they say, okay, bring the bottle. So at least they know based on that they can find out the product information. Okay. So these are some of the lower explosive limit and upper explosive limit. Another measure which is used in identification and classification of the goods. Right. So how is it classified? So it is to distinguish between the goods, not only the properties of the goods, but also in terms of transportation, in terms of packaging and transportation. It's not just about the classification, is not just based on the intrinsic property of the goods. It is the whole process of packaging and transportation which is involved. And identify the dangers which are there, ensure that the correct measures are taken. As I said, yes, a product, if it is handled properly, it is your friend. So the code actually helps us in terms of telling that yes, this is the correct way of handling it, this is the correct way of packaging it, and therefore do it that way. 9 classes, we will quickly go through that, right? So some of the classes are based on what can go together inside a container, especially if you're handling LCL cargoes, etc. Right? You may say that in terms of this is also this class, that's also this class, everything is dangerous goods, why can't they go together? Yeah. Right? Certain cases they cannot go inside the same container. Even if they go, there could be segregation limits or rules which apply there. Okay? And once it is inside the container also, on the ship where it can be stored, whether it can be on deck, whether it can be on under the deck, whether it can be, there was one case, I think the Hyundai, one of the ships where it was under the deck, which it was not supposed to be. The explosion happened under the deck. Okay, so these are the 9 classes which are there: explosives, gases, flammable liquids. I got one slide on each of that. We'll go through that quickly. We have already discussed this, the proper shipping name and the UN number. UN number, that's one thing which you always ask for from the shipper if it is not specified, because that is one unique number which will immediately help you to identify, or the carrier can identify what is the product. Yeah. And the corresponding PSN, proper shipping name, should be there. Okay. Have you seen this 6 and 7 anywhere else? Where have you seen this? How many of you have gone and seen a container being stuck, or a ship? Physically seen containers and ships? No? Never visited a port? Never gone on a ship? Next available opportunity, please do that, right? So that you will see all these things in real action. Apart from that, have you seen this somewhere else? 6 and 7? Hospitals, clinics, right? So hospitals, what is, okay, radioactive you can understand, but 6, infectious substances, anything which is used syringes, needles, etc., it's all classified. Okay? Poison, you will see it even in medicine bottles. Yes, if it is above the dosage, it becomes poison. Right. So here's the question, again, which carries more risk? A container ship, or or a chemical ship which is carrying 20,000 tons of. So the reasons you remember? Why? Sorry? Document, that is one reason. What else? Too many parties. There's numerous parties involved, different kinds of products, and therefore there's a potential for error is much higher there. Right, so those are the classification and the sub-classification. I'll jump to the individual slides which are there so that we can look at the picture. So this is class 1, right? Will you handle class 1 here? Sadesh, yes? UAE? No. Right. So other than that, it is completely.
Firecrackers for the national delegations and all, otherwise besides bullets,
Right.
secret
So those are the other the sub-classification which comes under class 1. Explosion hazard, projection hazard. I don't need to remember or by heart these things, but just be aware that within a classification there are multiple sub-classifications which can come, which goes into the various tables. Number 2, gases. Right? Again, you got flammable gas and non-flammable compressed gas. Oxygen cylinders, nitrogen cylinders, they are non-flammable, but once it is compressed, it has got, there is a danger which is there, right? So therefore, that's also classified here. And then of course, poisonous gases. And so there are 3 classifications which comes there. Flammable and combustible liquids, right? So again, you got the petroleum products there, paints. So there they got those chemicals which can cause fire. So you'll have a flash point mentioned there as well. Acetone, and then there are the combustible ones. Okay. Flammable solids. Now again, there are sub-classifications there, 4.2, 4.3. Certain things are dangerous when it is wet. So what is the implication on a ship? What is the implication on a ship? There are cases where, stowage, and they should also know if there is a fire on a particular container, whether they'll say, okay, the adjacent container is not on fire, but if water goes into that, that also can become an immediate danger, because when water is put, there was this one case in Merck's 2 years back. I remember because of the general average case there, where there was a fire, therefore the immediate response was in terms of putting water. The adjacent containers had caustic soda, which is in solid form. Caustic soda is a corrosive as per the classification, right? But it was in solid form. So when water went into that, it became corrosive liquid. It was stored on top. So that water, the corrosive liquid, went and damaged the containers which were stored beneath also. So when general average was declared, all these containers, there was this whole question as that who is responsible for this damage, right? So that's where the importance comes in terms of not just being, it's not hazardous in that particular form. What can happen when there is moisture, when there is water which goes in, all those issues comes in. Okay? Is it because of the battery? Yeah. Anyway. Right, so then class 5, is this something which many times there has been different interpretations or confusion, because sometimes we get so many questions about 5 and 5.1. Is this something which you have experienced? Not an issue?
We get many time inquiries that we want to cross service cargoes, but we are not done with these sometimes. So if any doubt or something has happened for this, that is something not allowed.
Right. Other than in terms of stowage. Right, so those are two categories which are there. Then toxic and infectious substances. So again, two categories there. 7, radioactive, straight away there. And number 8 is in terms of corrosives. So even liquids from batteries, sodium hydroxide, that's the caustic soda. And number 9 is in terms of the miscellaneous items. Right, so which can include elevated temperature, for example, bitumen asphalt. So if it is in heated molten condition, or other hazardous substance, hazardous waste, marine pollutants, all those things comes under this. Right. So those are the examples there, including lithium batteries. So coming back here, so the dangerous goods list is there in volume 2, which is there, and if you look at the actual book, it is there in different columns. The complete listing is there. So the way to read it is in terms of, yes, you have identified the UN number or the proper shipping name which is there. Then it goes section by section in terms of what is the packaging which is permitted, what are the segregations to be followed, limited quantities, if any, accepted quantities. So the complete table gives you that. Right. It can also be used with the PSN or with the UN number. And in certain cases, you could see special provisions. So in the dangerous goods list, it will just say, because special provisions itself is a long list, so it will just show, yes, for this particular product, this special provisions will apply. So you have to go back and refer to those additional notes under special provisions. Right? And some of the examples which are there, which comes from the DGL. and regarding hazardous waste. Okay. How much is the municipality involvement here in terms of treatment of hazardous waste?
Quite a lot. It's basically, if anyone wants to discard something, it has to go to the technical in the 309 code, which is down and else.
Right.
And anything else apart from that, it's if they would then put it back to the start.
And as said, because I've heard a lot of
Big deal.
conflicts in terms of they're not in sync with respect to how it has to be handled. So they don't go as per the IMDG code. Yes.
I mean, we actually don't know because it's basically the big long application that you make and send it there.
Right.
And then there's somebody evaluating it and telling what to do or how to do it. But why? If something that you will not recycling and let's say you going to start, you can start all at once. It's like,
Especially from damaged containers, leaking containers is a huge issue. Right? Right, again marine pollutants, because as I said, it's not free for all. You cannot dump anything and everything into the sea just because it is so vast, right? So there are certain guidelines which goes there. Even the waste from cruise ships. So this is something which in a discussion which came about 2-3 years back. Like I said, oh, food waste can be dumped, right? The fishes will eat them; they'll be happy. No, food waste is very huge in these huge cruise ships, which are equivalent to 4 or 5 5-star hotels. Even they cannot dump the food waste. You know which is the biggest pollutant in those food waste? There's a big pollutant in that food waste. What is that? Oil. So they have oil extractors on board, which has to extract the oil. It has to be incinerated separately, and then the balance can be organic waste can be dumped. Not in one shot, right? It has to be in a particular slow, in a phased manner. How much tons can be disposed of in how much speed, and all those things are monitored and recorded, right? So it's not so easy in terms of telling that the ocean is a huge dumping ground. So marine pollutants also carry a huge amount of importance which is there. Right, so other things which are covered here, some of the forbidden materials which are there, forbidden explosives, regulated materials, or something which is under classified by different countries. There could be specific classifications which are there. Power devices. So these are some of the examples. I talked about the power banks, etc. So those things also can come under the related items. Something which is familiar to us, but the extent of danger, especially if it spills and the whole area is with the fumes, beware. Please open the doors and windows and get out from that place. It is highly toxic there. Quickly on storage and segregation. So where the cargo can be located on a vessel, how it is done, and then segregation of course is with respect to how much is the distance which should be there between those cargoes. So it applies inside a container as well as outside on the ship. So that is with respect to storage and segregation. So this is where the carrier we all talk about, where the main line is taking the responsibility, the accountability there. So because they are the ones ultimately in terms of filing the manifest. So you've got the shipping name, the response number, phone number, ID of each of those hazardous materials on board, number, description, gross mass. So nowadays, of course, along with the booking, it goes in automatically to the system. Okay, classification as per the code, what should be the storage location, and any other additional information which is there. Okay. These are some of the other things where this talks about the storage on board, on deck, under deck, or should be away from heat. It should have ventilation. So these are the provisions which comes from the IMDG code. Right. Some of the additional requirements: marine pollutants, where can it be? Break bulk, dangerous cargoes, how it should be stored. Same kind of provisions apply. It becomes much more tricky in terms of like bulk cargoes. Yeah. Stowage of transport vehicles, containers, portable tanks. Right? Why transport vehicles? What is dangerous about them? Hmm? So what are the potential dangers there in a transport vehicle which is put on a ship? Battery and the fuel, right? So I remember there was this couple of fire incidences which happened with this intercity buses in India. The huge Volvo buses which are there. So it was ultimately, the reason was the fuel which went into the bikes, because many of them had this habit. You ride to the bus station on your bike, put the bike in the bus, and then ride for 12 hours. Other end you take out the bike and ride off. So that was a huge issue. So then they had to insist and ensure that the fuel is completely drained before stowing the bike inside the bus. There is huge luggage space there for the bikes. So those things also comes here. Right? So last but not the least, yes, training. So here again, we are all here learning about this. There are 2-day, full-day courses done by different organizations here on dangerous goods. Most of the lines here, they have their own in-house programs because that's where the implementation is the maximum. But as I mentioned, there are certain countries, and even in the IMDG code itself, it is specified what kind of training needs to be given, because I would say that it's a bit underestimated in terms of the importance of this is underestimated. So probably today you got a glimpse of that. Yes, about why you should do this, right? So I would only appeal that yes, continue to learn, challenge wherever there is a decision which is not acceptable to you, so that you learn more from that process. And if at any time you're on the other side of the table where you are going to dictate, right, to take the time to explain to others as to why certain things are done in that way. It's easy to say, my computer says so. That's not acceptable, right? But tomorrow the computer is not available, hopefully not, right? But the principle, the reason behind that should be known as to why we are doing certain things. Okay? And we talked about incident reporting. This is certain with respect to the US. So they have their own systems which is there. I remember in Singapore, they have this regulation that certain hazardous, some of the DGs cannot be transported by truck after 10 o'clock at night in the country. So any such truck which is given a permit to carry has got a jamming device, has an engine jamming device which is connected to the central civil defense. So if at all any of them are on the road, they get an alarm and they can jam that machine, from a central controlling. So that's the extent which some of these advanced countries they take in terms of permitting and handling and responding to these kind of products which are carried there. And that's evident from their safety records also. Right? So that's all from my side. That's some information on MSDS which I can share with you. Right? Is there any questions on MSDS since you are handling MSDS? Have you had any issues, or you just again pass the MSDS to? How do you verify that the MSDS is the correct one? Hmm? Hmm? Do they give the one which is from the actual manufacturer or anything downloaded from the net? Hmm? Do they make their own MSDS and give sometimes? Actually, no. With the IMDG code? Right. Actually, it's a highly controlled document from a manufacturer's point of view. There are version numbers which are there. It's a highly controlled document because they are the ones who know the maximum about that particular product. So that's another reason sometimes there are issues which comes up because people fudge the MSDS, to put it in simple terms. So that's where again a little bit of awareness from those who are handling the documentation will be helpful. You'll have the only the UN number and the material name they will change. Have you seen that? Especially if it's a Word document, please be wary. Yeah. It is in a PDF document, you can see who is the actual creator of the document, the originator of the document, you can still check. Of course, even that can be changed nowadays. Right, so basic information is there, properties, uses, so you have 16 or 18 standard. Again, the columns are all, the fields are all standard there, provided by the manufacturers to the users. Right. So that's like a snapshot which is there. So it will show what is the version number. A real MSDS should have that. Who has issued it? The original manufacturer. Yeah, it should not be on the shipper's letterhead. It should be from the original manufacturing point. Right? When should you use it? So some of the examples. Right? So especially if it is in a storage location, so then you need only the MSDS. So you don't need an IMDG to refer to, because it's something which has happened in the storage location. Right, so coming back in terms of just summarizing here, so it consists of everything which is related to packaged sea shipments which are there. All parties, shippers, carriers, anybody who is involved in that has to comply, because anybody who is breaking the chain and not complying, you have seen some of the examples, what happens. They are regularly updated and changed, so therefore, please look at amendments. So the next amendment is coming now. Already it is up in the IMO website about what are the things which are amended. So it is good to know that, what are the amendments which are there. Okay, so packaging and handling with respect to handling responses during storage and transport, and therefore you have a lot of shipping papers, marking, labeling, etc. Therefore, it's important to know that. And it's not just the main carrier's responsibility, it's everybody's responsibility. Okay, so coming back, is it clear? What is the IMDG code? Clear? Where is it used? Marine transport what? Sea freight? Yes. Bulk? Packed. Okay. And very bulk also. Why? Whose safety? My safety. Our safety. Everybody's safety. Okay. When? Throughout the shipment. Okay. Who has to do it? Who has to ensure that? Is it only the carrier? Everybody in the chain? Tomorrow you may be in the shipper's role, maybe in the main carrier's role. Right? And for whose sake? Everybody's sake. How it has to be implemented? Just follow what is written there. Right? If you have to say no, even if it costs you your business, please say no. Okay? Or find a different way of doing it safely. Right, so coming back to true or false, will you get everything correct? If you don't get everything correct, you have to stay back for another 2 hours. Luckily, we have a recording, you'll have to sit and watch that. Okay, so is it to avoid fines? For whose sake it is? My sake. It is for my sake. Okay. Is it law? Is it law? It is not law. What is it then? What is it called? Under IMO, it's a convention, right? But once it is implemented, incorporated in a particular countries, they have become a signatory, then it is incorporated into the local laws. Okay? Applicable for all sea shipments? Is it applicable for all sea shipments? Yes. Bulk? Break bulk? It is primarily for packaged, that's why you find everything related to packaging, labeling, etc. there. The classification, that's why you understand the difference. The classification 1 to 9 is the same wherever it is, by air, sea, bulk, break bulk, package, that classification is the same of that particular product. But IMDG's focus is on packaged goods. Okay, so that's the difference with this one. Multimodal transport, what happens? So it's not that it supersedes, actually countries, in their own transportation system, they would ensure that it is seamless. Otherwise, you cannot have multimodal transport. Imagine that the container has to come and it has to be repackaged just because the DG regulations are different for container and for road. It doesn't then make any sense for multimodal transport, right? The whole purpose of multimodal transport is that it goes seamlessly. The same container can go door to door from one country to another country. So they ensure that there is no conflicts between the local regulations as well as the other one. They implement the highest one. Whose responsibility? My responsibility. Risk and hazard, same or different? Different. Difference is clear? Okay. Revised every year? 2 years. Okay. Numerical classification. Yeah, expands. There's an overlap which is given. Yeah. Does it really indicate classification is just based on individual product? Does it really indicate 1 to 9 the actual extent of danger? That's why I said every product by itself is okay, So the way it is handled, the way the interfaces are there, so it doesn't actually indicate the level. 1 to 9 doesn't actually indicate the level. It is based on a lot of other factors which are there. If MSDS is available, do you still need to refer to IMDG? Yes, because MSDS is just talking about only the product, whereas IMDG talks about the whole transportation mechanism which is there. Right? Remember this? Key takeaways? Will you go and share it in your office tomorrow? Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
Apart from safety visual implications, is there any fines or criminal penalties if we are not handling these data as well?
Well, nothing of that is specified within the code itself, but I'm sure that within a local country's regulation, so if it's, for example, a misdeclared cargo, it is proven that company A is responsible for the misdeclaration, obviously that will come back in terms of a criminal offense which is there. Or if it is not handled properly. Yeah, has there been any experience with this?
As I understand that this regulation, you can only handle DB if you hold the certifications. So if you are a forwarder not certified for DB able to handle DB, there is still control from the federal national board, and there is a body in BBC which is taking care of these big drone checking ad hoc with the forwarders to see there is no compliance. So there is fine. There is very
So you were asking in terms of any incidents which happened, yeah. So that would become part of the investigation ultimately as to who is really the culprit in terms of the whole incident. Right. So this is what I normally say about yes. How was the session today? Okay, so that's the reaction. Yeah. I'll ask you after half an hour. Okay. So that's the reaction. But have you learned anything new? Yes? Will you remember that? That's the application part of it. How do you apply this? Is there something which you think you'll do differently in the office or at home? At home I am always accused of being too safe, coming from that background. Right? And then of course ultimately there's a business case. Right? It's for protection of the business, because if it is not done the proper way, it costs money to the business. Yeah, there's an immediate effect on property or people or the environment, but apart from that, there's an effect on the business also. Okay? Very good, thank you very much. If there are any questions which comes later on, feel free to speak to us. And the entire, we had 8 weeks, in between of course 1 week we had other session which was going on. So those who have been part of that from the ICS side, so thank you very much for participating, because without your participation, there's no point in doing this session, right? And how many of you are writing the exams? ICS exams? Enrolled next year? Name? Or intending to write? A couple of you are expressed, right? They are not here today. Right. We'll help you to elevate that awareness. Right. So we run this, initially we were running these classes only for the students who were writing the exams. Then of course, based on feedback from the industry, we started extending into to the wider non-students, non-members. But if you want more information, feel free to write to us on what the program is about. Yes, there is an exam, but then we have it's a membership. It's a professional membership body where membership is through exams, and then we maintain that membership. At least in this branch in Middle East, we can say that we have an event almost one every month. Much more than that sometimes. Yeah, the average of 12 to 15 sessions we do, which is free for the members, which includes sessions like this, which includes like many members who are sitting here, experience. But every time we listen, I've listened to KP's BL session last 15 years, but every time I sit in that session, there is something new to learn. Right? And Captain Bill, very experienced person from, and he has released a book in terms of how to handle cargoes, right? Except cruise ships, right? So those are some of the added advantages. There's a network in terms of going back and seeking advice. The businesses are concluded in our network. Jobs are concluded in our network. So if you need more details, right, feel free. And of course, you'll have the opportunity to come and talk about your experience here. Okay? Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Switch it off.
Thank you.
KP, all good? Where are you going? Which color?
Come to this. Table. Thank you.
Can you do us a favor and go on GSE? All GSE together, just one picture for
Mr. Osman, Sure.